Welcome to this edition we like to call Open Mic, and we're going to talk about something that I think is very important. There's a deadline that's coming up, and we haven't heard really much about it. And Bert, maybe we shouldn't hear much about it because ain't nothing really going on.
Well, I don't know about that. We don't really know that. It appears as if nothing is going on. Sometimes there are a lot of
What are we talking about first?
A lot of surprises in politics. There's the the Gang of Six super committee that's supposed to come together and find a way of reducing the budget by 1.2 or 3.6 trillion dollars in the next 10 years. And the question is, they were put up by the head of the Senate, the Democratic head of the Senate, and Harry Reid, and the
John Boehner.
John Boehner, the Republican head of the Republicans. John Boehner, it was Reid's idea, but Boehner agreed to it. And what they did was kick the hot potato onto this committee because they couldn't. The Congress couldn't settle it themselves. On one hand, you want people. The Republicans want no taxes in terms of revenue, and Democrats don't want to cut the Medicaid, Medicare, the entitlement programs.
Right.
So how would you bring this together? How would you find a way of doing what we can't do? Congress says. So they select three people from the Senate, 3 from the House, and try to put them together. And little rumblings are coming out about it that appear to look like, as you say, nothing's going to happen, and it has to be done by the 23rd of this month. They have to reach it, or there'd be major cuts in defense. But interestingly enough, they took off the entitlement programs off the table. Big cuts in defense that the Republicans don't want.
Do you think that maybe it has something to do with AARP putting that commercial out there saying that we vote?
Yeah, 50,
we're going to remember
we're 50 million people.
Yeah, we're going to remember you.
Yeah. And I think it'll be a travesty if they can't come up with some bipartisan situation, because then that's just going to reinforce what we've been seeing for the past few years, that the interest of the country is not primary, and that they can't find a way to work in a bipartisan way. Which should be the way the system should work at this point.
Well, one of the things that I was thinking about, and I wanted them to understand that when they take a snapshot of America, let's look around and see what's going on all levels. What I mean by that is what's going on in the rural sections of America, what's going on in the urban areas and some of these exurbs, they call them, or whatever. I was going over some information just looking at poverty. Just wanted to kind of get an idea, the changing face of poverty, And I was saying to myself that the whole picture of poverty is always the urban center, but it's not necessarily the case. People in rural areas are not doing well. People in these experts that lost their jobs and their homes, they're not doing well. And the thing is that when we make these type of decisions about how we're going to balance the budget, the question has to be what we talked about before, Lori. Whose back is it going to be balanced on? Because that is the question. It seems to me, and this is again where we have to motivate people to vote, Bert.
That's right.
Is because when the people they will make it on your back if there is no consequence to them doing it. And we see that's what's going on. If they can pass a law talking about we're going to cut Medicare benefits and we're going to do all these things like that, and there's no outcry in California, there was no outcry in New York when they passed it. And stuff. So these are the things we're talking about. It's a political intelligence that's lacking in our community, and I'm tired of it. Because I'm tired of hearing people complain about things happening to them when we didn't do the hard work in advance to prepare for what they're doing. So the super committee is going to make the decisions or whatever.
The super committee may make the decisions.
Or they might by default make the decisions.
Yeah, by default. But then again, the Congress may still not accept it. It's still possible that Congress may be too draconian for them, too severe, and they don't want to. So and they may be waiting for the next election, waiting for they're stalling and carrying on. The big problem here is people understanding what you just talked about. people not being standing up to deal with this, understanding the difference between deficit and debt, and what it means to your family, what it means to the families in the exurbs, in the suburbs, in the more well-to-do areas suffering too.
Right.
And but the poor, even in Mississippi, has a fourth highest or fifth highest rate of children born without fathers, right there in Mississippi. And a lot of the Malays down there in terms of poverty, right there in these southern states, where a lot of us are there living. So what the super committee does is vital in terms of least. Now, there's supposed to have been a breakthrough, a slight breakthrough, where the Republicans said, well, we will offer $200 or $300, billion dollars in taxes and tax revenue.
Right, increased revenue.
But that's over 10.
Which is the Norwich pledge, which they all said ain't gonna happen.
But that's like you and I getting together and say we're gonna honor Lori and we're gonna give her a beautiful cake and say thank you, Lori, for your contribution. But in the middle of the cake is poison. What the Republicans did was say, well, for us to agree to this, we have to cut taxes for millionaires.
Again.
Again.
Exactly.
And corporations. So that was in there.
And what we should be tired of is this whole process of not acting in the interest of the country. I mean, like you said, there's so many individuals who are going to be suffering as a result of this, that if we're going to claim to be the moral, compass of the world, that we should actually be looking out for everybody, for the country, for democracy, for those who have, those who don't have. I mean, all of that should be coupled in this whole bipartisan decision to work. But we're seeing the exact opposite. We're seeing people who are looking out only for themselves, and they're not even looking out for the country in terms of making sure that people have jobs and food to eat and health insurance and everything.
One good thing about this show, it brings out issues that are not normally discussed in a lot of comparable shows, like the issue in the financial issue in Europe. And it's affected, the stock market dropped, 350 points or more just today.
And destroyed John Corzine's corporation.
His corporation. So there is a relationship, a global relationship in terms of the American economy. But the voting, getting out there, and working hard, preparing for the 2012 election is so important. It shows you how even more important it is.